Just, yes, stop. Stop. Oh, she ends up. So technical. Okay, anyone wants to go up, just because I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Is it Dave representing? There's no one that's, no, Dave's usually representing.
Yep, the invite I sent to make sure
I can't, my email is not.
Yeah, this is like.
There's nobody in New York City. Somebody, Denise and I.
There's nobody at all?
No, there's no members,
There's no need.
no public, right, there's no need for it. Somebody had tried to pass. So. It's not, it's pending, it just got lost. So, well, it wasn't just New York City. Oh, it's New York City. Obviously somebody paid, that's right.
Yeah, no, I guess we figured out there's no one there, there's no one attending. Aboard, no worries.
I mean, technically, yeah. Right. Are we ready?
We are ready.
Oh, so there's nobody in New York?
There's nobody in New York, nobody in Buffalo.
Okay, well, here we are. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I'd like to call to meeting to order then, I get in the sense. Today is Monday, May 8th, 2023. This is an open meeting of the New York State Appearance Enhancement Advisory Committee. I am Michelle Dialler-Brenner, and I am chair of the New York State Appearance Enhancement Advisory Committee. The time is now 10:06, and I'll go ahead and start by taking attendance of the advisory board meeting members that are here. I've introduced myself.
Leanne Shea.
And Shirley Chang Shirley's usually in Buffalo, right? Or New York?
There's no one in
Or New York, okay. So as far as advisory board meeting members, it is just the two of us that are here. So thank you to everyone else that has joined us. I guess we'll just move forward. Given that we don't have enough members here, we will not have a quorum. So we will have to hold off and table approving meetings from September 13th of 21, October 25th of 21, April 11th of 22, May 23rd of 22, and October 24th of 22. I'm going to go ahead and move right along and get started with department and subcommittee reports. And our first is our enforcement update, and I'm going to pass that first to John Goldman to pass along.
Hi, yeah, good morning. I just wanted to take this opportunity regarding the enforcement report. We've been a little, over the years, we've had a variety of enforcement personnel present the report, discuss maybe some new issues, etc. But we decided it'd be best to have a dedicated staff person for that purpose. And so I wanted to introduce to you who has been selected for that. Jenna Berschwinger is a newly appointed Deputy Chief Investigator. She's been here half a dozen years. She's done hundreds, if not thousands, of inspections, so she's certainly familiar with the enforcement program and statutes and regulations and so forth. So she's an excellent choice for that position. And she, like I said, she's going to be dedicated. And any issues you may have or questions relative to enforcement, she's going to be your person.
Awesome.
And she'll be here to give the report going forward.
Perfect, John, thank you. Jenna, you can go ahead and proceed with your report and welcome.
So as John said, my name is Jenna. I'm one of the deputy chief investigators located up here in Albany. So for this meeting, I kind of looked at what was touched upon last April and kind of just wanted to build off that and give you folks a comparison because we've kind of been focusing on the same things, having the same program. So our 2023 inspection program began on January 1. We have a continued focus on nail salons with the ventilation requirements. So last April, when John spoke about this, he reported that at that time, we had completed 323 inspections statewide, and of those 323, 246 had ventilation violations, which was at that time a 76% failure rate. So looking at the first quarter of 2023, so January 1 to April 1, we have conducted 473 inspections statewide, with 113 of those having ventilation violations. So significant improvement from last April. That's about 23%, where last April was 76. We are still continuing the opportunity to cure process. So basically, those tickets that are issued, the licensees have an opportunity to cure the violations basically by submitting those corrections to us via email. And we've seen that to be proven very successful. Majority of people take advantage of that opportunity. So I looked at those 473 inspections that we completed, and 106 of those 473 have been referred to hearing, but only 32 of those 106 were for no ventilation. So that just goes to show that even for those ones that were ticketed in that opportunity to cure process, they were able to correct it and provide proof of ventilation. So it's going very well. And at this point in time, we're going to continue that same process through the remainder of the year. We have a total quota of 2,800 inspections statewide, and we see no issue with being able to do that.
Jenna, is it territorial specific at any given time, or do you have people all over?
All over the place, yes.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions, anybody? Okay, next is our processing report from Emily Lupe.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Included in the materials you were provided, you will find licensing statistics for April of 2022 and April of 2023. These reports show the number of appearance enhancement licenses, and they're broken down by license type. You'll see the numbers are fairly consistent between years. And that concludes the processing report.
That's great. Anybody, any questions? Any thanks. Examination administration report, Shannon McGuire.
So the following statistics will cover all of 2022. For cosmetology, the written exam was administered to 5,079 applicants with a pass rate of 68%. The practical exam was administered to 2,964 applicants with a pass rate of 82%. For aesthetics, the written exam was administered to 4,331 applicants with a pass rate of 71%. Whereas the practical was administered to 2,522 applicants with a pass rate of 98%. For nail specialty, the written exam was administered to 2,757 applicants with a pass rate of 83%. And the practical exam was administered to 2,205 applicants with a pass rate of 90%. For natural hair, the written exam was administered to 67 applicants with a pass rate of 46%. The practical exam was administered to 37 applicants with a pass rate of 92%. And lastly, for waxing, the written exam was administered to 1,426 applicants with a pass rate of 64%. Are there any questions?
Shannon, cos and aesthetics, that's a big difference between a number of people taking the written versus the practical.
I think a lot of that is repeat test takers because the pass rate is lower for the written than the practical.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. How are we catching up from COVID?
We are. Our
'Cause I know
next
you're
increase
still
a little
slammed
bit.
with
Yeah,
aesthetics.
Aesthetics especially.
Yep.
We're doing much better with pads and nails. That's why we've been adding extra days for aesthetics to
Yep.
try to help with that. We did see a slight increase from 2021. Nothing alarming. I think a lot of that had to do with the social guidelines being lifted in the middle of 2021, so we're able to test more people.
Any time we're gonna go away from mannequins, go back to real people?
We haven't discussed it.
We haven't discussed it. Are you recommending that
Mhm.
or?
It'd be great
For
to go back to
Nails
real
and
people first, at least for aesthetics, I find that we struggle a little bit with the waxing because it's very awkward. Even the makeup application, to just do it on real people would be so much easier. And now that we're past COVID and kind of out of that whole thing, the only time they're working on mannequins is to prep for state board. They're back on clients, they're working on people. We're not using the mannequins at all in the school anymore, except to literally do a prep for state board, and it throws them off a little bit. It definitely does.
Take a look.
In coming from the parent, I would say keep it with the mannequins, only because it's always difficult to find somebody who has a state board cut.
We've been, it's been 15 years on the mannequin, it's going really well.
Yeah, when I did it however many years ago, my her grandmother died the night before, so I had to find somebody like the night before who had never worked
That
it.
tends to be.
Yeah. That's taught.
Issues.
Nobody wants pin curls and
Yeah.
skateboard
Yeah,
set.
right. But it makes sense on aesthetics, because the
Yeah.
mannequin's totally
Yeah,
different.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, it's different. So that'd be awesome. That'd be great. Thank you. Any questions? Anybody else for Shannon? No? All right, moving on to action items. We've got one item under that, and that is lash tinting, and I'm going to take over on that. For as long as I can possibly remember, lash tinting clearly states in your parents' enhancement law book that it is not permitted at all. And that's one of those things that has always been right out there. And then from a professional's perspective, as well as business owner and school owner's perspective, all we get are the constant, well, everyone's doing it, the other states are doing it, and then the professionals that are doing it anyway that are out there. So we've kind of kept our eye on it, and our biggest struggle for years has been that the FDA has not approved anything for lash tinting. In July of 2022, Reflectisil actually has a product called Intense Browns, and it is not FDA approved, but has been passed as FDA compliant. And I personally, that's out of my realm of legality from compliant and approved. However, if you do go to the FDA guidelines, they clearly list colors that have been FDA approved to be used for brow tinting and lash tinting as safe and effective. And one of them is silver nitrate in a percentage of 4% or less. And this is exactly what Reflectisil is using. They're using a silver nitrate at a 3%. So that came out, they went to the FDA did approve them as FDA compliant for use in lash and brow tinting. So I sent some information over and would like to bring that to the board to take a look at because it's a huge part of our business. There's an enormous market for it, and there's so many things that are out there, and if there would be a way that we could make that acceptable for estheticians and cosmetologists would be fantastic. I don't know what that takes. David, that might be need your input. Because it is in our law book, so I'm assuming.
And it's something, I'm coming from a salon owner's perspective, is I see it advertised at a bazillion salons all the time. And I have, guests coming into my salon asking for it, and, I'm compliant. So I'm like, yeah, we don't do that. And they're like, well, why not? So-and-so does it. So I'm potentially losing business, being compliant, but yet these people, literally when they're advertising it and they're not getting hammered for doing it, that's the risk I guess they're taking. I wouldn't be comfortable putting my head on a pillow at night, but
We do cite it regularly, I would say, I wouldn't say it's uncommon, I wouldn't say
Okay.
it's excessively common, but we see it, and when we see it, we don't have to observe it occurring, we just see it advertised in the price list and we cite it.
Yeah, because it's advertised all the time.
Well, curling, what is it, dyeing?
Firming.
Curbing.
Well, the reg, I think, only says dye.
Yes,
It does,
the-
that's
the-
true.
Well, it's not permanent. From my understanding, looking into like lash lifts, as long as it is keratin based,
Yeah.
that's legal to do. Not ammonium thioglycolate.
I think Dave has recently issued an opinion to us, just an enforcement, that we can't cite anything but dye because the reg specifically says dye. I think our enforcement people were of the opinion that any chemical near their eye is dangerous, and that really is the spirit of it. But we just cite dye.
Okay.
Other things, because this reg is so specific,
Well, and finding out the difference, looking into companies to find out if they're, for lifting, if they're ammonium thioglycolate or if they're keratin based is really tricky and really difficult because they have a lot of different names for different chemicals.
Yeah,
well, we would
maybe.
need guidance from Dave.
Yeah.
Right, and maybe the thing to do, because you make an interesting point, so we don't have any other reg that says perming
There
or
is
lifting.
I thought there was something in there on perming.
I have
I thought
not,
it said
I
ammonium.
haven't seen it in ours, but you know what, it's interesting, Leanne, because you do make a point, I guess we could circle backwards and go back to, because there is a link that FDA has listed, all of the ingredients that are approved safe. So if it is on there as safe, then if it's a lift that's using something like that as a keratin based, right? But yeah.
Yeah, it's huge in the industry right now.
Dave, do you have any thoughts then on as far as the tinting goes?
Dave,
I
you're on
can't
mute.
hear him.
How do we on yours?
Oh, hi. Sorry about that. I would needed permission to be unmuted. That's what I was trying to do. So in terms of the regulation,
Dave, give us 1 sec, you're not loud enough for us.
is that better? Hello? Hello?
It's not loud, yeah. Shoot.
Is, I guess,
I think it's us.
I could call Dave on my cell and put on speaker.
well, let me see if I could
Sure.
switch the audio. Hold on, let me switch the audio.
Well, if you put it on speaker, it'll be recorded because we're recording
Okay.
this speak.
Right.
Sure.
Try again, Dave.
Is that better?
No, it's not better.
Yes.
He's talking.
John's calling you. Are you getting another call?
Hi, is that any better?
Yeah.
So speak real loud because they want the mics to pick up on the recording system.
Hey, sorry about that, everyone. Usually this doesn't have any problem. So the statute or the regulation just says that no appearance enhancement licensee shall be authorized or permitted to apply dye of any kind to the eyelash or eyebrow hair. In reviewing it previously, our opinion from counsel's office was that permanent as used in the regulation doesn't necessarily mean like everlasting permanent. Rather, it just means that it has the ability to penetrate or to permeate, the hair root. And so, really that would not necessarily mean that we would be focused solely on, the chemical or the material of the product, just whether or not it has the ability that, to permeate sort of the root structure or the hair structure of the hair. That doesn't mean necessarily that the board can make a recommendation change the regulation, you know, something to the effect that even if it still permeates the hair, then provided that it still, you know, was FDA approved or FDA compliant or something to that effect, that could be something that the secretary could consider to change the reg.
That makes sense. And so Dave, in order for that to happen, what needs to come from the advisory board? Something written up and signed by everybody that's on the advisory board before it goes to?
No, I mean, certainly if the board were to sort of have a consensus on that, that would certainly be persuasive for the secretary to, you know, consider. One of the items, you know, for the agenda today to go over was, you know, sort of the role and the power of the board.
Yeah.
You know, so this is one of those committees at the department that technically the secretary could act without, you know, approval from the committee or even consensus. But considering that this is a regulation that has been in effect for so long, from a policy perspective, it would seem as if it would be, you know, important to have a consensus of the board before the secretary were going to move forward with the reg.
Okay. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. Then we'll go ahead and do that, put together something as a consensus from us, and then bring it to the next meeting? Or do I email it, or?
Well, that's what happened last time, it was supposed to be the next meeting.
Yeah.
And then we still didn't have a quorum.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe we should,
Okay.
amongst the board, get something, emails, and then.
Yep, we'll do that.
And submit it before then.
Okay, all right. Anybody have any questions on lash tinting?
Sounds interesting. As a consumer.
It eliminates mascara every day.
Yeah. Awesome, thank you. Dave, thank you so much. I appreciate it, thank you. Moving on to our next agenda item is new business. We do have 4 great topics. Our first is a list of procedural services for Jody DeLallo. Jody, hello.
So, yes, so many months ago, I think the board and the department and Dave worked on a subcommittee to create this document that lists some of the procedures that are out there or some of the services that are out there and whether or not it was within the scope of licensure. So, interestingly enough, eyelash and eyebrow tinting are on this list. So I was hoping we'd have a little more, you know, a little more concrete since last meeting, because we discussed that last meeting, so we brought up the whole FDA approval. So we are going to send a link to our website. We are going to post this on our website. We were hoping to have clarification, or maybe, I guess for now, I mean, the eyebrow and eyelash tinting is prohibited, so we'll leave that in there because it does list it as prohibited. So we're gonna send an email out to all of the licensees. We'll post it on our website. The email will just have a link to our website.
Excellent.
And then with the communication, we'll let them know that it'll be, every time it changes, we're probably not gonna send, you know, but we'll update it on our website, and they'll just need to periodically.
Well, it's like a
check
living
that.
document, so,
Yes.
yep,
Yep.
so it's accountability on the professionals to keep
Yes.
checking their scope.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yep, so we'll send that out, as soon as we can.
See, now here it does say eyelash layered with keratin.
Okay.
So at some point, I was told by the state that only keratin was approved, not ammonium thioglycolate.
Can't speak to that. Off the top of my head.
Well, that's why this will be fantastic,
Yeah.
because people are calling and getting different answers to questions.
Yeah.
So now we can just send them to the link, because I'll probably post the link on my website for the school too, because we get inundated with phone calls all the time.
And then they can go and look.
Yes, yep. And I think some of the biggest challenge to this point has also been, is they go to the shows and product manufacturers are telling them, oh, no, you can do that, that's absolutely safe. And we're like,
Or sometimes
You can't.
I've had staff members say, well, there's a class and they're giving it in New York.
yes.
And I go, well, just because they're giving it in New York doesn't mean you can do it in New York.
Yeah.
It's a class.
No, they're doing fibroblast plasma classes, they're doing all of these things that are just, yeah, just crazy. Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very exciting. All right, next on new business are board members and the appointment process. And Jody, I'm gonna pass that to you once again.
So I wonder if we should maybe change the order of this. I don't know what makes sense, because Dave's gonna talk about roles and responsibilities, but either way, I know there's been some inquiry, like, what are you gonna do to get, so, I mean, our involvement in the appointment process is, you can feel free to, anyone that you know is out in the industry that would like to be a member, you submit a resume, you could send it to Heidi as the, board coordinator, you send the resumes, we'll forward it to our office here.
Yep.
They just vet it to make sure that the qualifications are met, depending on what the description of that particular appointment, and then that goes to the governor's appointments office. And
Okay,
those appointments are made there.
okay,
Is
that's,
that what the holdup is? Because I've submitted like I've had 2 people.
I can't
At some point.
speak to their process or their timeline, but I know we forward them when we receive them, as long as
and
the
you sent them
people-
to somebody here?
Well, originally it was Denise.
Okay.
As long as it's, they meet the criteria for
Yeah.
appointment, then we would forward it along.
That's perfect, because there was even a time where it was just kind of, the list was sent out and here's who assigns those things and reach out on your own. So that's great to have, like,
Yeah.
you guys for a contact in order
Yeah.
to do that,
And people can
because
do
we're
that as well,
desperately trying.
but
Yeah.
we'll forward any that we receive
Okay.
as well.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yes.
I personally know that I've sent my credentials and resume to the speaker, to the Secretary of State, and just have never heard anything. And then the pandemic happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Send again.
Yeah, she did.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Heidi.
Just asking Kendra, who do I do this?
That's awesome. That's great. Fantastic. Yep, we're trying. Okay, next for new business, roles and responsibility of the board. Is David gonna do that? Or do we have-
Yes.
Okay. He doesn't look like a
Oh, yes, it
Jasmine,
was
but-
going to be
I was
Jasmine,
gonna
yes,
say.
it was a last minute.
Okay, awesome.
Change.
Go ahead, Dave.
Hi everyone. Please let me know if you're having any difficulty hearing me, and I'll try to yell louder. It's my understanding that it's been some time since you've met, or certainly met in person, to go over sort of roles of the board, and so Jody had asked that we put together just sort of a brief overview of what the advisory committee's role is, how it interacts with the department. And so, that's what I'm going to be doing today. Obviously, if anyone has any questions later on, I'm happy to try to address those. So, feel free to call us with any questions or send us an email. But basically, the advisory board exists as a statutory construction. The board was created at the same time that the general business law went into existence for the current sort of statutory scheme. So basically since the early 90s, when the department began regulating the different occupations, aesthetics, waxing, and addition. And so that's when the board was created. It consists of 9 board members. Currently there are 5 sitting. Unlike some of our other boards, we need a quorum of the full board, not those sitting at any given time in order to conduct official business. So in this instance, we would always need 5 members, whether or not there are even 5 appointed, to meet to actually conduct business. General business law requires that the advisory committee meet at least 3 times, but of course it can meet more than that. And it would be basically when the committee has something that they would want to bring to the Secretary of State's attention for consideration, or the other way around, where the Secretary was considering something and was looking for input or guidance from the advisory committee. So, for that reason, that's why there's sort of diversity in the committee in terms of who's appointed, in in terms of the skill set, the licenses, the practices that they perform. And the committee basically has the broad powers to advise the secretary on any and all matters that affect the general business law. So the general business law has some examples in the statute. So cover, for example, things like education, curriculum requirements, cultural awareness for particular styles and practices, but that is by no means exhaustive. Basically anything that's relevant or that touches upon the industry is something that the advisory committee can make recommendations for, or the secretary can ask the advisory committee for their opinion. But that because it's advisory, and this is something that I was sort of alluding to earlier, the committee does not actually have to vote or meet in order for there to be a change in the regulation. The secretary has that power to change the regulations basically at his or her discretion, but obviously having the input from the committee is certainly advisable and important. The only other thing that I would mention in terms of powers of the committee is basically that it is advisory. So at any point, any of the board members can certainly bring something to our attention, certainly Jody's attention, and it'll be something that we can consider. So that's all I had sort of for the update or the refresher on the board powers. But as I said, if anyone has questions or concerns, feel free to reach out.
That's great. David, thank you. Any questions? I have one question, and simply because this is not really my realm of understanding at different times, but how is it that certain things surpass our knowledge? For instance, I know that there was a bill for microneedling. And we've gotten inundated with phone calls at the school several times of saying, well, a bill was passed and we're allowed to do microneedling as long as we take a course. I think it was 40 or 60 hours or something like that. And I hadn't heard of it. We hadn't had any conversation on it. Somebody found it and sent it to me. And at the time, Denise was still with us. And I thought, oh my gosh, how did this happen? And none of us knew about it. And it's still pending. It's sitting out there. It never got passed. It's just sitting there. But how does this happen? How do we not learn of these things? I mean, obviously, somebody hired either an attorney or a, what do you call that? I'm drawing a blank. A lobbyist, thank you, or a lobbyist. I mean, so these types of things can actually get passed by all of us without us knowing, and then could possibly become a law?
So that would be, I think, somewhat rare for it to actually become law. Generally speaking, we have a legislative affairs individual as well as a legislative counsel at the Department of State. And so usually what would happen is if a legislator was approached to consider a bill, that legislature might contact our intergov person, and it's not a requirement, but usually that's what would happen. And then our intergov person would contact counsel's office and program and basically say, the state senator, this assembly person is floating this bill around, what are our concerns. What we would then do is we would work with our legislative counsel, and then we would make basically a recommendation to the governor's office. So we wouldn't generally, communicate our concerns directly to the legislator, and unless it's a bill where it's been signed by both chambers. If it's a one-house bill, generally, the department doesn't publicly comment on any of this stuff. So I think it would be somewhat rare that a two-house bill that's signed, we wouldn't know about. But, that's generally the process, the way that it would work if a bill was actually getting, picked up or there was some sort of likelihood it would get passed.
Okay.
Did that happen? Did it pass?
It didn't pass, it's still floating out there. So I don't know what happens when, I don't know why, and that was, you know, Denise had said at this given time, she said, it's still out there, it's kind of pending. And I don't know what that means, because that's not, you know, how long do things pend for?
Be a negotiation.
So that could happen frequently where you'll have, so we have obviously a Senate and Assembly, so it wouldn't be uncommon for a bill to be passed just in, one of the houses. But it would obviously require both houses to vote and to approve the same bill before it gets to the governor's office. So generally, one House bill that's been pending for a while is usually an indication that there's no legislative appetite to actually move it forward. In one of our other boards, there was a one House bill that's been proposed by the same legislator, I think every year for, I want to say like 8 or 9 years, that just never goes anywhere. So I don't think that's an issue, but I think certainly if there was ever a two House bill, I think that our intergov affairs person, or certainly our legislative counsel would know about that. And so I think the department would know, and obviously we would certainly relay that information to the advisory committee.
Great.
To my knowledge, there's no two House bills pending that impact Article 27 of the General Business Law. So I don't think there's any two House bills pending, or at least none that have been advised about.
So was the bill to create another subcategory, in addition, that would be licensed, is that what it was?
Yeah, it was just to, because it's microneedling, so it's puncturing the skin. Nowhere in our scope of practice is puncturing the skin permitted. In a very interesting situation that when Denise Tidings was still here, we went back and forth, and we're not quite sure how it happened. Because when we were working on the drafts and what falls under our scope and doesn't fall under our scope, we know puncturing the skin does not fall under our scope of practice. But it's huge. I mean, it's gotten super popular. So what they've also said is, well, if the needle is only under 0.25, then it's okay for estheticians. It kind of went back and forth. So Denise had submitted it to the medical board, and the medical board said, it's not under our scope of practice. So we kind of played around with, well, if it's not under anybody's scope of practice, not saying it is okay, but it doesn't really fall under anyone's scope of practice. And then all of a sudden, acupuncture said it's under our scope of practice because they use needles that puncture the skin. There's not a single acupuncturist out there doing microneedling. I mean, it's a whole different realm altogether. But because they sent back a claim and saying, well, in order to puncture the skin with a needle, that falls under acupuncture. All of a sudden, microneedling then fell under acupuncture. They had a couple of board meetings, and I tried to attend or get a summary or do something, and I wasn't able to. So we're trying to just kind of get the board, the acupuncture board, to say that microneedling itself is not what they do at all, because it's small holes in the surface of the skin to apply product. So somebody must have had, I don't even know who it was, and a lobbyist went and tried to get microneedling approved for aesthetics, as long as the needle was under 0.25, and as long as they took I think it was a 40-hour course or something like that, and sanitation and disinfection was included, and so it's just out there. So no, it hasn't gone anywhere.
So I don't know if this helps, but I just found the bill. It looks like there was a one House bill proposed in the Assembly. It was first proposed in October of 2020, proposed again in January of 2022, and it was proposed again in January of 2023. The bill would allow licensed estheticians and cosmetologists to practice microneedle, but it would require them to take an additional 5-hour microneedling course offered by a state licensed appearance enhancement school. And it would also define microneedling specifically as the use of a roller covered in very small needle to insert very small needles into the skin. But it doesn't appear as if this has been picked up in the Senate. So, as I said, historically, a one House bill that, doesn't have a counterpart in the Senate, oftentimes doesn't go anywhere. But I can certainly make a note and speak to our legislative council to track this bill and see if it gets picked up anywhere.
That'd be awesome. Great, thank you. Thanks, David. Any other questions?
Has there been any talk in New York State of
Excuse
doing a,
So, we'll open up for public comment at the end.
oh,
Okay.
sorry,
That's all right.
Sorry, thank you.
Going back to just on roles and responsibilities of the board, is there anything in regards to, I mean, I know things happen and people can't always make it, but is there anything for like some sort of attendance, like not requirement, but yeah, like if you miss so many, maybe you're on probation, because you're talking about, we have to have all 5 to get a quorum because there's 9 seats and there's only 5 filled. And that hasn't happened since I've been on the board. And I mean, I know it hasn't been that long, but anything? Just to, make people somewhat accountable?
I can look into it.
Okay.
I don't know off the top of my head.
Because we're all
what
busy, I
can
mean, I
be
get that,
done,
and last minute things do come
we-
up.
We encourage attendance, we send the meeting dates out in advance and have, make sure a majority can make it.
Right.
We try to, I don't know what control we have over unscheduled,
Well, yes, I get,
Issues
life
that-
happens and
right.
things happen,
but
but like when it's the right part.
we do encourage,
Because otherwise we get nothing done.
No, and you know what, Leanne, it's funny, we were chatting about this before, and it makes an interesting point that at the same time, we have all tried to figure out ways to get on this board and be part of this and to make a difference. So a little accountability on our group together to communicate outside of this meeting with you folks might be beneficial too. Hey guys, here's what we've got going on, and to pull ourselves together. See if we can try to do that outside of here
Because
as
we can
well.
do that Zoom.
Or request that we try to.
Yeah.
If you're not involved and you don't care, don't do it.
Okay,
How's that?
that sounds good.
All right, excellent. Then lastly on new business is new advisory board meeting. Heidi?
And that's going to be on Monday, July 17th at 10 a.m.
Perfect. Next on the agenda is public comment period. You may comment.
I was just wondering if there's been any talk of doing like 2 degrees of aesthetic licenses. A medical aesthetics and a regular aesthetics, which I know several states have done. Because we are getting into so much more microneedling and such.
I know that I've been on this board for, for a really, 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 really long time. And even back to the time when, Annette Hansen was on the board. That was a really long time ago. I mean, even back to that time period, we had this conversation, especially when the 2-tier licenses started to get really, really familiar. And we do a 1,200-hour program at the school with Sedesco. And I think it's a great idea. I think this conversation also came along with taking aesthetics and cosmetology and pulling those things apart. But if I'm not mistaken, and David, I'm gonna put you back in the hot seat on this one, the legal steps and what goes into doing that is quite intense. Because we're basically having we're adding another license by adding a master aesthetics license. So I guess that's question number 1. I think it'd be fantastic. How it gets done, I don't know. And separating aesthetics and cos, I think we came to the decision that that will never ever happen, but would be a great thing also.
It would Absolutely, because.
The qualifications aren't
As
there.
a COS
Yeah.
instructor.
Yeah.
I mean, what we teach in the program.
Absolutely.
And then they go out and start doing all this stuff.
Right.
And it's like, please get training because it's not part of our curriculum. We can demo it, but
Absolutely.
please go get training.
Yep.
Because the
You're not
50
trained.
hours that, or whatever it is, 50 or so hours that we spend doesn't cut.
Where do we put that?
It's just a public comment
Yeah,
at this
so-
point.
Yeah, so I think that, yeah, David, I won't put you on the spot, how's that sound? But I think that, I've only been doing this how long? It's a great comment, it has been brought up before, and I think that's a great thing then for the advisory board to discuss about too, and then come back to the board and discuss, you know, different options, if it is at all feasible for something for us to do, down the road, so thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Then we will go ahead and adjourn today's meeting. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks, David.
So Shannon,
Nice